Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news this Friday morning as Manchester United get linked to more transfers, free transfers. I thought the transfer window closed a week ago, but many United fans feel we should still be doing business and we've been offered two midfielders now. We'll be talking about that. One of them you'll know in Rabio, and of course very interesting comments coming out from Deschamps. We have been linked with him again today, not Deschamps, don't get excited, Ten Hag outers, but we have been linked with Rabio and a Turkish international. Lots and lots to discuss around that one. For me, I think the window is closed, but a lot of people, I don't know, maybe football's changing. Maybe football is changing and maybe these sort of deals will happen. I don't know. We'll talk about that. Also, Man United have made another key backroom staff appointment around sports science and elite performance. We'll talk about that because it is becoming more prominent in this football club about backroom staff, and will it actually make any difference where it really matters? Can you have all the, you can appoint all these great chefs, but if they don't have the ingredients, how can they really cook? We'll talk about that as well. Also, a bit of insight into the Manchester United dressing room. It's not leak information. It's, in fact, you could say it's a positive. Eric Ten Hag is demanding more from his players. Should we be expecting more from the players as fans? It's been very quiet, I would say, all summer. And, certainly after that Liverpool game and the Brighton game, we're not getting tweets from players. We're not getting interviews from players. And that, in some ways, is very, very good. But when you look at what Liverpool players have said about Arne Slot and how positive the training is, etc., should we not be getting some of that as well? Do you think there's a bit of a vacuum around Man United at the moment that it's just very quiet? I mean, nobody even says anything positive, really, about the club or Ten Hag. It's almost like everybody's on lockdown. Do you think players are happy? What's going on there? Also want to talk about what we think Eric Ten Hag's dream attack is, and a few other bits as well. A very interesting transfer bit of stat as well. So there we go. Marvin says maybe they just don't like him. Mr. AA says players are shambles. I don't know. I mean, we'll throw that out. I mean, that's what we're here to do, isn't it? I think it's, it was something I was thinking about this morning, how we've had so many bad results over the years and it's, we're sorry or we're in this together. And I just can't think, I mean, I might be completely wrong here, but I can't think of any positive sound bites from any Manchester United player since we won the FA Cup. There was a lot after the FA Cup and we saw players hugging with Ten Hag and stuff, but there's just not been any positivity pieces. There has been from new signings, but you know that's PR. You know you're going to get that. But there doesn't seem to, I don't know. I'm trying to look at it from the Ten Hag out brigade, even though I want Ten Hag to do well and INEOS have spent all this money. But I do look at it and I go, where's the positivity from the players? I just don't. They're almost as uncertain as the fans. And I don't know. Maybe perception. Maybe this is an INEOS plan. Lock it down. Don't know. Morning Evil Twin, says Matt Silverladder. Thank you very much. Okay, let's get into the news, though. That's what we're here to discuss. So 2 bits of news coming in this morning. It is a news show, remember. We don't always agree with it, but here we go. We'll start off with this. We've been linked to a Turkish international called Yusuf Yazici, or Yaziki. You will know more than me. 27 years of age, Turkish midfielder, was part of the Euros, didn't start for Turkey, just been released by Lille. Apparently played 42 games for Lille last season with 12 goals and 4 assists. He is a free agent that has been offered around the Premier League, including Manchester United. But also, probably of more interest, Newcastle and Manchester United remain in the mix to sign 29-year-old free agent Adrien Rabiot, despite an offer from Galatasaray being on the table for the French midfielder who left Juventus this summer. This is coming in from Team Talk and a few others. And effectively, Liverpool have been linked by another outlet as well. Galatasaray, if you search Rabiot on football Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, then it very much is about Galatasaray. A lot of Galatasaray fans getting very excited about Adrien Rabiot. Yesterday, Didier Deschamps, who obviously it's the international break. Oh, that's something else I want to talk about as well. Beth literally messaged me about this and said, good topic is to talk about how players play well for their international team but don't play well for England. I said, well, I'll tell you what I said in a moment. I don't necessarily think... I think it's a good topic, but I think there's a good reason for it. Anyway, So I would say that going back to what we were talking about, we will talk about the international break because Garnacho got an assist last night. Delot played very, very well. Bruno played well. Martinez was flawless for Argentina again. I see the positives in that, by the way. Just very quickly, we will talk about it in more depth and get your thoughts on it. But I do see the positives. I think that these players don't look totally match fit for me. And I think as long as they don't get injured, playing for their country, a lot of them enjoy it. Will give them confidence. So I'm actually all for it. The standard's crap, but the you know, a lot of these players love playing for their country. So hopefully it just gives them a little bit more confidence and fitness, which I think helps. Personally, I think from a fitness point of view, you're always in a situation where you want your players not to be on international duty, but then I think sometimes it does them good mentally. Martinez, left back for Argentina, the last 3 games, says Robert McCormack. And Abhijit says, Klopp doesn't know me. I spoke to him once. He told me to go somewhere, work hard and return Balotelli. Klopp can say what he wants, but he loaned and sold Balotelli the next season, says Abhijit. Yeah, I mean, apparently that quote was very old. I'd never seen it before, but it's still relevant to react to. Keep your gob out of Man United's business when you're a hypocrite. Anyway, that could apply to all of us actually though, but at least we support Manchester United. Right, let's go back to this news about Rabio. So first we'll talk about Rabio. Didier Deschamps basically said in his press conference for France that it's an embarrassing situation for Rabio, whereby, you know, he's part of the Euros in the summer and basically isn't playing football now. He's not training with the football team, so he can't be picked for France. I mean, that to me is just... Does that not say everything about the character of this player? Because there is no doubt that Rabio is a player that, you know, I admire him as a footballer, but I also think that we have to acknowledge the fact that there is 100% in our experience an issue. How big that issue is could be big, could be small, but there is an issue there. We've tried to sign him twice and we've met a brick wall of, you know, we want ridiculous money. He was in the Euros for France. He's not kicked a ball since then because he's waiting for money. He's not prioritised his football career. He's prioritised his bank balance. And now he's not playing for France, his country, as he waits for his bank balance. I mean, this is just not the personality of a footballer you want at Man United. I'm sorry. It amazes me that people are so desperate to bring players in that they would like to ignore this. I mean, we've literally had issues with the likes of Jadon Sancho and Donny van der Beek and many other players over the last... I'm not victimising either of those 2 players. I'm just saying we've had so many different issues with players, and we still currently have issues with players that are here. Why you know, why be attracted by that? It's just such a red flag to go anywhere near him. And I think you might look at it from one point of view and go, look, leave it to the end of the window to get the best deal you can get. But when you're missing out on playing for France, your country, because you haven't decided to play for a team yet, I think that just about says everything. I mean, I'm very surprised Rabio's not in China or Saudi Arabia or the MLS, because if money seems to be his motivator. So, yeah, there are a lot of United fans that would like it to have it happen, and we have been linked to him again, and Newcastle have been linked, and Liverpool have been linked, and Newcastle are well-run clubs, and so are Liverpool. So I'm not going to sit here and say there's absolutely no chance, but I'm just saying I don't like the idea of it. And also, I think it's really important to remember that we haven't paid any money. I'm trying to think how many years now. I mean, obviously Eriksen was over 27. Who was the last player we brought into the club who was over the age of 27? Certainly nobody this summer. Last summer, Højlund, no. Mount, no. Onana, no. So I think we're sort of moving Casemiro, Johnny Evans on a free last year, which is, you know, Johnny Evans was very unique, wasn't he? I mean, Johnny Evans is not Rabio for a multitude of reasons, positives and, I suppose, ability. But I don't see this. But what I will say is football is changing, and we can't ignore the fact that there are players of Rabio's quality that are relevant beyond the transfer window closing for however long that lasts. He could be signed tomorrow by Man United. I can't say that it won't happen. I don't think it will. I absolutely don't think it will, and I personally wouldn't do it. But there are a few players out there that you can just you can't rule it out because they're free agents. Hermoso, somebody said it yesterday. I'm not going to call them out because I can't remember who it was, but Hermoso would have been a very interesting player that we were linked to. He's signed for Roma now, by the way, so we can't do that. But I think he went beyond the transfer window. I can't remember when he signed for Roma, but I think it was at the start of this week. So this is happening more and more and more. But we have been linked with Yusuf Yasici, or however you pronounce it, Turkish international. I think he's about 27. He's more of an attacking midfielder, released by Lille. 12 goals and 4 assists last season. He has been offered up to Manchester United as well. And I think that that's certainly something that you might look at. Memphis Depay is apparently a free as well. So yeah, I don't really know. I don't know. Look, I find this weird. I find it weird. I'm of the mentality that the transfer window closed last Friday and we go with what we've got. There are a lot of positives. There are still players at the club I wish we'd got rid of, but I sort of feel like we've just got to buckle down and get on with what we have. I don't see United doing either of these deals, if I'm being honest. But you can't ignore the fact that the possibilities are there. Johnny Evans was never bought as a player. He was bought as an example, says Martin Saunders, and a leader to our youngsters. Free Rabio's demands cost only 24 million plus mercenaries get the job done. Keel, I think you're actually talking me out of it. 24 million pounds for Rabio sounds incredible. Incredible. I mean, that makes me not want to go anywhere near it. Is that what he wants in wages and signing on fee? God, no. Dele Alli's free, Mark. Yeah, I wouldn't go anywhere near Dele Alli. Memphis Depay. I think we go with what we got. What level do you think Rasmus can reach? I've seen a lot of online people call him mid and average. I actually did a Twitter Q&A yesterday and somebody said, who do you think is going to be the surprise package of the season or something like that? And I said, I think Rasmus. I really do. I think he will have a good... Injuries permitting, I think he will do very, very well at Manchester United. And I think that there is a team that Erik ten Hag has in his mind that is not even half complete at the moment based on injuries and people that haven't really, been involved yet. So I think Rasmus will be very important, but obviously he's got to stay fit. I want to get into a few good conversations, but it happened yesterday. I should have brought it into the 8 o'clock show. Manchester United have announced Sam Erith as their latest recruiter acquisition into the backroom staff. Obviously, we've seen the likes of Dan Ashworth and Omar Barada. Not everyone's called Dan. Dan Ashworth, Dan Barada, Dan Wilcox, Dan Favell. No, we've seen Ashworth, Barada, Wilcox, Favell's come in. There's a couple of others, obviously, as well. Who is this Sam Erith? Well, basically it's performance, it's mentality, it's sports science. He's seen as a leader in his one of the leaders in sports science in general, certainly in the football industry. And he's formerly worked with England, Manchester City and Spurs, and apparently it's an appointment that Dan Ashworth wanted. Is it something that we should be getting excited about as Manchester United fans? I don't know whether we should be getting excited about it. I think we should be positive about it. I think that as I said on Monday when we got the interview coming out from Barada and Ashworth, it doesn't in any way, shape or form absorb the loss and frustration of what was yet another disappointing performance against our biggest rival that we've seen plenty of over the last few years. But the difference is you've got a director of football and a CEO who are football people, and eventually that's got to rub off. I know there's a lot of negativity around at the moment around the manager and certain players, but the more people you bring in who are good at their job in football, the more that has to have an impact. I think the only thing is we just don't know how long it will take. But even if Dan Ashworth's not the best director of football in the world, he's still way better than what we had. Even if Omar Barada's not the best CEO in the world, he still absolutely destroys what we've had for the last 10 years. So there will be an improvement. It's all about how long it takes, because you can put the components in place, but then you've got to have the ingredients as well. So I think that this Sam Erith coming in looks very much to me like it's about performance again. It's about mentality, consistency, accountability, all the words that we need. But I just think sometimes you bring people into these positions and you say work with this set of people, and then the set of people you're working with, they have limitations. So this Sam Erith could come in and go, well, look, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, and then they don't do it, and then he'll be saying to Barada, the problem isn't the plan, it's the people that we're asking to do the plan. And we know that there are still a lot of players at United that aren't right, and I think that bringing these people in is the correct thing to do, but we also need to keep churning players out and bringing new players in, because it's the same when you talk about Manchester United stylistically. We have got players that can't play the way that Man City, Arsenal, Aston Villa are playing. They play the way Ollie and Mourinho play, or Sean Dyche wants to play. Those players need shipping out. Doesn't matter. You could bring Pep Guardiola in himself. He wouldn't get those players to play Pep ball. So if you bring somebody in with a strong experience in sports mentality and sports science, but you've got players that don't have strong mentalities, it's never going to work. So I like the appointment, but I wouldn't expect immediate results, because you've got to have the ingredients for the chef to cook, if you know what I mean. But it's another step in the right direction, certainly. I've got no issue with that. United's focus should be signing insane impact players off our bench. Mason is a £65 million sub. City's bench comes on and changes the game, or maintain their place, says the Duke. Any news on Obi Martin? Mark, still not official. It will be, Steve. I'm not worried about that at all. Just going back to what the Duke said there. The thing about Man City and Liverpool is they bring players on who know the system and they're system specific. If you think about someone like McTominay, he's not system specific. He's plan B. And there aren't many of the top clubs that have plan B options on their bench. They have plan A. You know the system. Come on. And look, Klopp did this very well with his youth. Their youth players knew the system. So Man United need a system, and then they need a bench that knows that system as well. I mean, look, Mason Mount's not a topic for today, but we're all more than happy to, riff. And I think we've spoken about Onana a bit yesterday. There was a few conversations I wanted to have in the international break about certain players, and Mason Mount would still be one of those. I think the overarching thing with Mason Mount is going to be injury, but also, does Mason Mount fit into Manchester United's system? Long term or short term? Well, short term he doesn't because he's injured, but long term I still don't know how Mason Mount fits into Manchester United, because when everybody is fit, which is probably never, but I think the dream front three for Ten Hag would be an absolutely fit and firing Marcus Rashford off the left, Rasmus down the middle, probably Garnacho off the right, if we're being completely honest, maybe Ahmad, and then Bruno, Mainu, Ugarte. There's a lot of people on the bench there, maybe an Ahmad or a Garnacho, certainly a Xerxes, a Casemiro, but Mason Mount's on the bench. In any connotation I put together for Manchester United, I never put Mason Mount in the starting lineup, and I think that's a problem, because what was the plan with Mason Mount? Was it simply misguided that we thought Eriksen was losing his legs, so let's put Mason Mount there and have another number 10 who's an 8? Which is just not Premier League specific for me. But anyway, Mark, you should apply to join the Fans Advisory Board. There are 2 new openings. You would be a good representative and a bridge between worldwide fans and the board, says Orcas. I'd happily do it, Orcas. I'd never get voted on because, unfortunately, that sort of organisation has a very, very bad opinion of outlets like this. Honestly, there's an elitism on there, and there always has been. So I don't, there's nothing more I can say. I don't think they do represent fans, to be honest, because I think it's very elitist. That's my opinion of it. And I say that with good authority, because at no point or juncture have they ever reached out or been open to having a conversation. So I can't deal with people who are ignorant to a conversation and judge a book by its cover. So, yeah. But that's the world we live in. And to be honest, I think we're changing that world. I think that world's in the past. It's like the mainstream. That world's in the past. Look at them in the rear view mirror. They're not actually up to date with the modern world. So let them carry on. You know, there's lots of people out there, isn't there, beyond football, who are still stuck in the past with old ideas and, you know, clinging to the past, you know, probably watching UK Gold 24 hours. Do you feel like you're hitting a brick wall, that what people don't understand, that it will take a few windows to transform and have a plan? Says Martin Saunders. Thank you, Martin. Thank you very much for your short. Well, I think patience is always the hardest thing. You know, we're talking about what we were talking about there. I think patience is always the hardest thing. For me as well, I think patience is very, very difficult. And we all struggle with patience. And in football, it's probably one of the hardest things, because you're only as good as your last result. Certainly. I want to bring this in. There's a few things I want to talk about, but let me just stay a little bit topical for a moment, because I do want to talk about this noise around the dressing room and how we're not getting any noise. Obviously, that's great from a negativity point of view. You don't want to get the leaks, but I don't feel like we're getting anything positive either. Why is it so quiet? Why are players not saying anything positive either, apart from new signings? But could that be coming from INEOS themselves, who just want to lock it down and make Man United quite a bland brand like Man City? I don't know. We can talk about that, because I think there's pros and cons. But I want to talk about the international break. Lots of people, I think, overhype the international break, mainly because they have to, because there's nothing else to watch. But I do not ever, and have been very consistent about this, I don't respect the quality of international football comparable to the Champions League or the Premier League. It's just night and day as far as I'm concerned. So wake up this morning, a lot of people talking about how come these players can play so well for their national team when they only meet up and train once a week, but they can't do it for Manchester United when they're training together for the last 3 years. On the face of it, it would be a really interesting conversation if you didn't watch international tournaments and realise how slow and it's nowhere near intense as the Premier League. It's nowhere near as coached as well. There's nowhere near the patterns or dynamics that you get. What I'm saying is, if Pep's Man City played any international side, they would batter them. Not just because they've got better players, but because they're just way more intense. They've got better coaches. They've got better tactics. So, look, with all due respect, and I'm not mentioning Ronaldo here because I could say McTominay or anybody else, there are people still scoring goals regularly in international football that would be bang average. Bang average to poor in the Premier League. So I don't respect international football comparable to the Premier League, La Liga, whatever you want to say. And I've always said that. I've said it for years. It's to me, it's so obviously slower. It's way more pragmatic. And the reason it is slower and more pragmatic is because they don't get to train their players very often. So many managers, also the quality of coaching is crap in international football. There aren't many coaches in international football that you go, oh, I wish they were managing my club team. I mean, England had Southgate. Southgate was the best paid manager in the Euros. I don't think Southgate could pay a club to let him manage them at the moment. So it's slower. Managers are not as good. Coaches are not as good. And also, because they don't get to train them very often, the style of football tends to be more pragmatic. Let's not concede and try and, you know, be good at set pieces and things like that. So I don't see the correlation between a player that does well for their international team and then doesn't do well for Manchester United. I don't see that because there is no tactical blueprint or similarity. What there is without a doubt, and we saw this with England, what there is a mentality angle. There is certainly a mentality angle. I think that you can see the enjoyment that Martinez gets being with Argentina and Garnacho probably as well. We've seen the enjoyment that Harry Maguire, I mean, he didn't say anything about Man United, did he really, after the game? But he's there talking about being back for England and how disappointed he was that he got injured. And, you know, Luke Shaw, he enjoys playing for England so much that he'll go and play when he's injured. So I think that there is a positivity reset. There is a confidence, which I think helps us. I really do think it can help us that these players go off and are happy, whether it's Bruno Fernandes, Dalot, Martinez, Garnacho, Harry Maguire. They go off, they're happy. And as long as they come back happy, it can be quite good to get them away from what will be a very challenging Carrington at the moment, because they've just been beaten 2 games in a row. There's pressure, there's uncertainty. So those players it's like having a holiday, isn't it? You know, if you're stressed at home and work, and you have to keep doing it for 2 weeks, or you've got the option of going away on a lad's holiday or a girl's holiday or away with your partner or whatever holiday, okay, it will give you escapism, positivity, and also a lot of people, when they come back from the holiday, I mean, they can be depressed, but a lot of people come back from holiday rejuvenated and ready to go. So I see this international break as a positive for Manchester United, and the more the players play well, the better. But I don't see any correlation between why they're playing well for their international team and not playing well for Man United, because I just think there is such a world of difference between playing in the Premier League and playing in international football. But I see the positive. And I think when you look at Bruno Fernandes, Lisandro Martinez, Garnacho, Dalot, they played in the Copa America and the Euros. They didn't really get a pre-season. And what people tend to do is they'll go, well, that's quite good because they've had a couple of weeks rest. But they haven't really, have they? If you think about Marcus Rashford or Anthony, after the FA Cup final, they had a whole month off, and then they had a whole 6 weeks of a pre-season. If you're Bruno, you finish the FA Cup final, you're into a training camp with Portugal, playing games every 3 or 4 days. You then get knocked out. That's disappointing mentally. You're tired, you're disappointed, you have 2 or 3 weeks off, and then you're straight back. We've got a match on Saturday, and guess what? It's a competitive one. So there is no downtime and relaxation. So I think the likes of Bruno and Dalot and Martinez and Garnacho and De Ligt, and everybody who was involved in the Euros or the Copa America, they are playing catch up with everybody else. So having this international break where they get a bit of escapism and a bit of confidence is still a little bit like their pre-season, and hopefully they'll come back. They'll come back stronger for that, because we definitely don't look anywhere near our best at the moment, do we? United are also playing to what players should be able to do and not playing to what they're producing. Players aren't being developed. Anthony should be at left back, Lindelof DM, etc. E.g. Ashley Young and Valencia. Duke, you've just absolutely ruined everything good that you've said on this channel over the last few weeks. Anthony should be left back and Lindelof should be DM. I mean, you've just absolutely ruined yourself. I think, you know, with a name like the Duke, you were actually doing quite well, and you've absolutely just ruined yourself. I don't know what to say. Lindelof DM and Anthony left back. I mean, every time I read one of your comments now, I'm just sort of like going to go, what? Eric Ten Hag doesn't have multiple windows. He needs results, as Kiel. And Yellowstorm says, going forward, in order to maximise Ugarte, Casemiro attributes and be more solid defensively, 3-5-2 is the best option. Our wingers are not good enough. No, see, another one now. When have we gone from like discussing the news and topical matters to people talking out their arse about things that are never going to happen? I don't know what you think the United Stand morning show is, but it's not some little, you know, notepad for shit ideas. We're not playing a 3-5-2 either. I mean, you've just saved Duke there. You two are holding hands in your swimming pool full of shit. Yeah, anyway, let's have a look at what people are saying. Need to raise the floor of strength and ability still. We're well on our way, but we'll need to be much more cutthroat, says Alban. And sure, stick Maguire in nets and Onana at the left wing, says that Clarkey. Yeah, just talking about international football, I think that it's a positive. I think if Marcus Rashford was part of the England setup, you know, it would be a positive as well. At this stage of the season, I think it's a positive. The only one I think it might not be a positive for is Mainu, who I just think is desperate for a rest, even though he probably can't see it himself. But Mainu is proof that players need rest as much as game time, funnily enough, says Patrick Lynch. He has been playing competitive football for the last 12 months straight. Well, I do think that there is this theory, and I think it's a fair enough theory, that we will see maybe Casemiro and Ugarte play together against Southampton and Mainu rested. I mean, I don't know. It's very difficult to read Ten Hag, isn't it? But I do think that there is the possibility that could certainly happen to give a bit of a rest to Kobbie Mainoo, who I think certainly does need it. Yeah. Anthony as right back will not be any worse than Rashford on the left wing. We need to pulling up trees. Radical changes needed in the lineups as sin. You see, I disagree with that. I don't think we need radical change at all. I almost feel like that's the worst thing we could do is make radical changes. You know, putting players in different positions or playing different systems. I personally, I might be in the minority, not for the first time, but I don't think radical change is needed at all. I actually think what we needed was a little bit more stability in the first 3 games, and we might have actually been speaking in a completely different language, footballing wise. If we'd taken those chances that Bruno and Mount had against Fulham, it would have been 3 or 4-0, which is a much more positive result than 2-0. If we'd have been a little bit more composed against Brighton, we would have beaten them. Defensively, Maguire and Casemiro made shocking errors on both goals, and we had the chances to score beyond the 1 goal that we scored anyway. And then Liverpool, again, Liverpool are better than us, but you give them a 2-0 head start because your midfielder is, you know, playing like he's wearing a bloody blindfold. So I don't think radical changes are needed. I just think that it's concentration and application that causes us the problems. And also, the only radical changes I'd be looking to make is strengthening in a team that hasn't really got going. I mean, look at De Ligt only started against Liverpool. He's bloody playing Maguire for the first 2 games. You've got Dalot playing at left back in all of the games. You've got Casemiro playing as the holding midfielder. He didn't even play as holding midfielder in the FA Cup final. Agate's not here yet. Rasmus is injured. The wingers aren't necessarily working in the system at the moment, whether that's through form or whatever. So look, I don't think we need radical changes. I think we need players to up their level a little bit, and we need certain players back in the system. Raskit says, let's get Rasmus in goal. Makes sense with the latest ideas. Thank you very much for that. But look, I did want to talk about this. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. We have had the last few years at Manchester United where we've had a multitude of leaks negatively out of the dressing room. But we've also had a lot of positivity that sometimes is deemed to be toxic positivity, whereby you lose a game like Liverpool and you can't move for Instagram posts or tweets from players saying, you know, it's not acceptable, we accept this, we're going to work hard together, this, that and the other. And I've noticed this season specifically that there is a real lack of that. There is not really any noise coming out of Manchester United players at all, positively or negatively. And I quite like that in a negative sense. It's great that certain journalists are not getting their dressing room leaks anymore. But I do think United, look, personally, I definitely think this is coming from the very top. I think this is coming from Sir Jim's team, that players have basically been told to shut up and, you know, do their talking on the pitch. I think that's absolutely fine. But we are also Manchester United, and you can't be a shirt-selling PR machine and then, you know, just tell players to be quiet. I think that we are such a force in the social media world anyway, that you've got to be very, very careful about players just being quiet, because it starts to get perceived and seen as a different message itself. For example, I think after the Liverpool loss, that vacuum of nothing doesn't necessarily do any good when you've got people like, you know, current Liverpool players talking about all summer about how excited they are about Arne Slot and, you know, how the training is really, really good, etc. Man City are a team that their players very rarely talk and they're boring. I think Man United need to strike a happy medium here, because I do think sometimes you do need a bit of positivity from your players, you know, a bit of interviews, etc., just to be like, you know, we as fans crave it in a sense. I mean, what would the problem be on Monday if Bruno Fernandes is just saying something positive about what's going on at United? And maybe over the last few weeks we could have had that as well. My wider point is, and I'm probably not communicating it as well as it works in my head, is that it's just very quiet around Manchester United. And when you've got quiet, you get conspiracy. And already I've seen people saying on social media, and even in the chat this morning, the reason they're quiet is because they don't trust the manager. They don't necessarily support the manager. And whilst I don't think that's true, the silence doesn't defeat that argument. Maybe the players aren't saying positive things about the coaching and the manager because they aren't on side with it. So I just think it's gone very, very quiet around Manchester United. And I personally think it's probably come from within the football club itself, telling players to stay quiet. I mean, there's a lot of players that have done very little on their socials pretty much since when we won the FA Cup. And many people would say, well, that's a good thing because they're probably worried about, how that gets perceived and reacted to. But I do think there's a few positive things we could do. I would love to see Martinez do an interview through Manchester United after a really difficult year last year, just to come out and say, it's been hard to get back, but I'm, played at the Copa America, I'm back playing for the team. I'm really happy at the club. The coaching's brilliant. Stuff like that. I know it's PR, but it just feels that vacuum at the moment where I do think that fans are sort of being left to fend for themselves. That's how I feel. I think fans are being left to fend for themselves. And I read a comment last night after the video, and it really resonated with me. And it was basically like this: at the moment, as a fan base, we are approaching the darkest days of the last 10 years, where fans are fighting against each other for two arguments that they're quite passionate about, and we're just being left to it. And I think the club always has a responsibility to help with that. And all I'm interested in is fan opinion. I've been doing this for 10 years. We've been doing this for 10 years. And it's true. Like last night's video, I was talking about Jurgen Klopp, and I was reading the comments, and it was like, Goldbridge is deluded in his defence of Ten Hag. And I was like, I wasn't defending Ten Hag. I don't want to talk about Ten Hag in or out. I think anybody who's talking about Ten Hag in or out on Friday after Sunday really needs to move on. I was talking about how Jurgen Klopp was blaming Ten Hag for Sancho with absolutely no context behind it at all. But I think that feeds into what that other comment was about how at the moment there is, and we should be brave enough to just call it, at the moment there is a very big danger of division in the fan base around this biggest of issues that seems to have been rumbling on for a long time. INEOS made the decision to keep Erik Ten Hag. I think there's more that they could be doing around that to generate more noise around positivity, and I think players could be a part of that. But at the moment, it just seems very, very quiet. They've made this big decision. They've backed this manager. They've given him these coaches. They're bringing this structure. They've spent all this money. But the team just feels a bit flat. I suppose it's got nothing to do with interviews. I just think the team feels a bit flat at the moment. It seems to lack identity. I'm just going to say that. It lacks identity. There doesn't seem to be... I was watching us against Liverpool, and I could see Maguire and Evans on the sideline. And they were just like a couple of blokes who obviously care about the club, but sort of like, I wonder if I'll get on. Same old, same old, Johnny, isn't it? Nothing ever changes. And you're just like, I'm not going to hark back to the likes of Roy Keane and David Beckham, but accountability is just, I don't see anybody taking responsibility. Cohesiveness is a good word, Paul, as well. I don't see any accountability and responsibility in that team at the moment. And we've seen too much of that over the last few years. We saw the 7-0 at Anfield where heads just drop. And what we've got to see is some accountability and responsibility. And I just don't think we're seeing that from the players. And I do worry that their silence is almost like, well, it's not my problem. I'm just here to earn money and do my job. And actually, that's not what Man United's ever been about. And that's not what the big clubs are about. You're not here just to put the shirt on and earn money and try your best. It's a way of life. It's a football club that means more than that. And I just think that we need a little bit more leadership on the pitch, because there's a lot of leadership going on behind the scenes, of course, the CEOs, the directors of football, but on the pitch, can anybody in this chat, watching live or not, tell me that last night there was on Sunday against Liverpool, there was leadership there, because I didn't see it. And yeah, we've gone to town on Ten Hag quite rightly, but I do think that for anybody who's ever done any coaching or anybody who's ever played the game, I used to play centre back when I was like at a good level, when I was in like my teens, and I remember the manager would be shouting, and sometimes I'd just go, fuck off. You know when they're having a go at you, and I'd be like, I'd nod my head, and in my head I'd be going, shut up, you wanker. I'm not doing that. It's very difficult to change things on the pitch. You can change substitutions, you can try and get your orders across, but anybody who's played competitive sport, most of the manager's work is over the minute you step onto that pitch. You can do in the dressing room, you can do it at half time, you can do it on the training coach, but on the pitch, this is why people like Roy Keane and Steven Gerrard and John Terry are so important in the history of the Premier League, because they're basically the manager on the pitch. And I do think United need that. It's not an excuse, and it's not a reason why we should be having a go at the players and not the manager. That's not what I'm saying. This has been something that's been going on for a long, long time. We need to get some leadership on the pitch. We need to get some responsibility on the pitch. And I felt on Sunday again, and it's not one overreaction because it's been going on for a long time. I look at that United side, I look at players coming on, and I don't often see accountability, responsibility, and leadership. And when you've seen it, and you see it at other clubs, but when you've seen it at Manchester United and you know what difference it makes, I just think some players are treading water at the moment. Maybe they're scared. Maybe they're not interested. Maybe they're being told to be quiet. I don't know. But I definitely think that in a game like Liverpool at the weekend, the reason people would say, oh, we miss a Fred or a McTominay is because they're probably going to clatter somebody. They probably are. And I loved that De Ligt tackle. You know, the one where he got booked? I felt like applauding it, but it would have been taken the wrong way. I loved it because I was like, that's just frustration. I'm going to clatter you in half. You're not going past me. I'm taking you out. And I loved that from De Ligt, because you know what? What's one of the things that people said about De Ligt? He will bring leadership to this club. That is exactly, on a very watered down level, what Roy Keane would do in a game like that. He would just go and clatter somebody. He'd clatter somebody just to say, look, I give a shit. This is fucking embarrassing. And I'm not just going to let people run past me without there being consequences. And I liked that from De Ligt. I mean, obviously it's a foul. And, you know, if he'd really badly injured the Liverpool player, you'd have to retract the fact that you liked it. But it's that's what we need in that team. And that's why I like the character of De Ligt. I like the character of Martinez. I like the character of Rasmus. And hopefully we'll get that with Agate, because the more of those characters we bring in, you need 15 of them. We might not have 5. We've got such a dearth of leadership in that squad. We've always said this. There's a lot of players that aren't here anymore that were the same. Man United, look at what happened with Solskjaer. Man United are a bloody good team when everything's going their way. Even now, when everything goes our way, we're a good team. And we can go on these runs. But when things go wrong, we're bloody awful. I mean, it still happens now. When we can have 60%. I think it happened at, I don't know who it happened against. It might have been Brighton. It was probably Brighton. We had 60% possession at 0-0. The opposition score, and our possession goes down to 40%. We're one of the few teams in the Premier League that can have more possession, concede a goal, and then have less possession. What normally happens in football over many, many years is you concede a goal and your possession goes up, because the team that has scored a goal will spend a bit of time just, you know, what's the most vulnerable time after you've scored a goal is that you concede a goal. So most teams, when they score, will have a few minutes of just composure. Let's make sure we don't concede. United are one of the few teams that get attacked again and again after they score a goal. And you know why that is? Because people know we're vulnerable. I guarantee every coach in the Premier League says, when you score against Man United, don't sit back and give them the ball. Go at them again, because they are notorious for their heads dropping. So, you know, it feeds back into this Sam Erith coming in, doesn't it? It's about mentality. Good morning, Mark. I'm excited to share that I'll be moving from Estonia to Ireland in mid-September, says Shril. Shrilal? We'll be there for our next tour event in Dublin, and I can't wait. Well, you're moving to a lovely country, mates. Enjoy. United One says, INEOS knows they don't want to write a cheque they can't cash by promoting positivity with Ten Hag. Likely they've lost faith in him and days are counted. I completely disagree. I completely disagree, United One. They've already wrote the biggest cheque in supporting him, so I don't think they're going to be saying don't do positivity interviews about Ten Hag when they've just chucked £200 million at his project. Elliot says, I know Bruno's our captain, but do we actually know that he is perfect for the role? Not sure who else, just get the feeling that something's off. I mean, look, that wasn't my point. We've obviously seen many ex-players talk about Bruno's capabilities as a coach, as a captain for Manchester United. He's the best that we've got at the moment. Is he the best captain? No. He's not the perfect captain, not by a very, very long way. But is he the best that we have at the moment? Yes. Therefore, I mean, that's just the cold, harsh fact, isn't it? It could be better, but I also think in the modern game, you need more. You need more leaders on the pitch. You should read The Burnout Society, a fascinating read. Talks a lot about toxic positivity. Also, keep up the great works, his uncertainty principle. Mate, I wasn't going to say this, but this is how we do this on here. So, you know, there's always good comments coming in. Ahmad says, what play style should we play? I'll come back to that one as well. I was actually thinking about this last night. So I've got no problem blocking people on social media. If I go on Instagram or whatever like that and I see something that's just not for me, inappropriate, rude, or just a complete knobhead, I'll block them. I don't know whether people still take it as a screenshot and it's a win. I've never understood that either. Why is it a win if somebody blocks you? I mean, at the end of the day, it's my life. If I don't want to read that, I'll just block it. Ignore, because all I've ever been told through my life, I remember my granddad saying it to me as well, is that ignore the hate and focus on the good. The haters just want to drag you down. They're watching you all the time. They're never going to go away, and you're never going to change them because they're bitter people. They're arguing with themselves, really. So if I'm told to ignore all the hate, then the best way to ignore the hate is just to block it out. So I will do that. If I see... I don't do it very often, but it has to be relentless, and then I'll just go, right, I'm out. But honestly, the reason I say this is because uncertainty principle is saying that there's this book about toxic positivity. Over the last 2 weeks, I've blocked 3 accounts that are just constantly positive about Man United and Ten Hag. And yet I'm Ten Hag in. And I find it nauseating. And I've seen a lot of people sort of quote tweeting it in a positive way, quote tweeting it in a negative way. But look, rest assured, I respect the Ten Hag out movement. I respect any opinion that isn't abusive and toxic, because it's an opinion, and you can't do what we do and you can't operate in life if you can't accept other people's opinion. But that, just to let you know, I am definitely not tunnel visioned about positivity around Ten Hag and Man United, because I see some people who make me want to fucking throw my bloody phone in the river or something, because I see it come up and I have to block it, because if I don't block it, it clearly for some reason keeps showing me it. And I don't know whether it's my phone listening to me saying, I support Ten Hag, but I certainly don't want to look at some of the shit that gets thrown out there from the other extreme as well. It's just incredible. So yeah, I the book sounds very interesting, but it's only the same as, Player FC is the same, isn't it? Player FC is toxic positivity. Just supporting a player over your club and not being able to see that they're not playing well, or that they're not, yeah, I've said enough. 5 bench players to make impact this season, in your opinion, says Akil. What does that even mean? What I don't know what that means. 5 bench players to make impact this season. What should we talk about? what meals we're having for dinner in bloody January. I mean, what does 5 bench players to make an impact mean? I couldn't give a shit, if I'm being completely honest. I don't even know what the question is. 5 bench players to make an impact this season. I wouldn't see them as bench players if they're going to. I mean, look, Collier, but I'm looking for him to become a first teamer. So I suppose Collier, yeah. I'm not giving you 5. Do you see Ten Hag turn it around in the next 6 weeks? Says Just T. I think the next 6 weeks are going to be very difficult, mate. And that's what you'll get from me, realism. I want Ten Hag to do well. I'm certainly Ten Hag in, and I don't agree with sacking him at the moment or any time in the next, couple of weeks. But I said it to you before the Liverpool game. If we get beat by Southampton, that is an absolute... That Southampton game is horrible. Some people think it's good. It's horrible. They are crap. They are newly promoted. It is straight after the international break at 12:30, and we're away. You could be playing that game at 4 o'clock on the Sunday and have a day and a half more rest. You could be playing it at Old Trafford at 3 o'clock and you've got the home crowd behind you. It is a horrible game because also everybody expects us to win. And winning won't even be enough. Because if we win 1-0 and we're shit, we'll still be shit. So it's a horrible game, that one. So when you say, are we going to turn it around? I can predict whatever you want me to predict, but I'm not going to not acknowledge that the next 6 weeks are going to be very difficult. And that Southampton game is horrific in the sense that there's only one scenario that works. 3 or 4-0 win. Or higher. But even then people will go, it's only Southampton. So Southampton can only cause problems. It's not going to solve problems. Even if we win, I don't think it will change the rhetoric that much. Consistency, isn't it? And I think you're right to sort of pinpoint the next 6 weeks. Bruno spoke in the week about us being top 4, team only. And Ashley Young and Valencia were an amazing enough right back and left back. They were mouldable. I'm just thinking how to get the most out of a 95 million winger, says the Duke. I said last night with Anthony, it's an ability thing. He can't perform in the Premier League. That's his biggest problem. I don't think putting him in left back is going to change that. We were talking about the issues with Casemiro and how it's clearly age. I think the issue with Anthony is ability. He's not shown that he can transform from the Eredivisie to the Premier League. So putting him at left back, I don't think solves it. I think he's got to show that he's good enough to play in the Premier League, and I don't think a positional change does that. He's not playing on the wing because Ahmad and Garnacho are better than him, but he's still decent. He's not playing on the wing because he's just not playing well. So when you adapt Valencia and Young to fullbacks, they've already previously shown that they're good enough to play in the Premier League on the wing. So, yeah. Edward V says, Casemiro and Agate as a defensive pivot would help us stabilise, grind out positive results and give us time to build team chemistry and get players back from injury. Thank you very much, Edward. Rasmus for goalkeeper. Okay, just in relation to style of play, I don't know. I guarantee you I won't have it. 1 minute. Style of play, there is sort of a I was muted through all of that. Fucking hell, it said I was talking. So I'm going to be using something like that on a few videos that I'm going to do, but there are people at the moment that are sort of like saying, should we be more pragmatic, go defensive and go back to counter-attacking football? Should we be more direct? So I want to do a sort of video on that sort of thing. Duke says, that's fair, I rest my case. Mark, can you use that on the same screen as the webcam? Oh yeah, what I was showing you there was just like somebody had mentioned something about tactics. So we're going to have a bit of a tactics board that I'm working on at the moment, but I just want to be able to do, I won't be able to talk to you for a minute, but what I want to do is this. I want to be able to move sections of the team together. So like this. So I'm working on something at the moment where I can move sections of back lines and everything and just, you know, more look at what we're doing out and how our positions are doing and stuff like that. But I personally don't think we should be looking at wholesale changes. I personally don't think we should be looking at reckless changings of formations or tactics. I think what's very clear to me is that Casemiro is fundamentally a big problem for United at the moment. How do we make him not a problem? Do we drop him completely? Do we? I think most teams at the moment are playing with a double pivot, and I think we're leaving ourselves very exposed with a very tired Mainu and a very exposed Casemiro. The fundamentals of what we're trying to do with our fullbacks bombing forward is quite interesting. But you know as well, one of Man United's biggest problems is, and we've spoken about this before, if you've got 11 players performing at 7 out of 10, nobody is doing better than decent, because 6 is average, 7 is decent, 8 is good, 9 is fantastic. The problem we've got at the moment, and we've had it for probably 18 months, is that every game we play, there are 3, sometimes more, but there are always 3, 5 or below players, below average. You cannot carry players in the Premier League. You look at someone like Fulham, there are some of their parts, say, carry too many players. Like, people will start chucking names around, but if one player is playing badly consistently, get them out of the team. Like, and the option isn't always there, but we've got to get 11 players on the pitch. If you want to see a system, you've got to get 11 players on the pitch. Absolutely. I don't know why I froze there. Got no idea. Absolutely none. Weird. Might just be YouTube. Might just be YouTube. Anyway, okay. Thank you everybody for watching. Make sure you smash a like on the video. Don't forget it's Friday, so with a couple ready to go, and very, very excited about that. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe, and I will speak to you a little bit later. Take care.